All right, everybody. Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru. And we have the brother, my good brother, Awini Baba, on with us tonight. And we're doing I don't know, this might be a 3-part series, 4-part series, 5-part series. We're not sure, but it's Africa is on the rise. And so we're going to be discussing, the many, not just the opportunities, but what's going on the continent that should be celebrated, certain initiatives that should be addressed or focused on. That's what we're going to be discussing as we do these series on Africa is on the rise. So I have Brother Awini on with us tonight. Brother Awini, how you doing? How's Ghana?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's good to be back on. I hope everybody's doing well. Ghana is good. We're in the rainy season now, so it started to rain
Oh
all
man.
across the country. So yeah, so the temperature is much cooler for the most
All right,
part.
cool. So
Mhm.
Africa is on the rise, brother. Let's
Yeah,
jump right into it.
yeah. So the continent of Africa is such a great continent. I mean, sometimes we forget how great it is because we're stuck with, all the negativity that is given to us in the media, you know. Uh, and today we should be looking at some of those things that we can capitalize on. Uh, we have a youthful continent that is rich in every kind of resource you can think of, from material to human. And Africa is where the world is going.
Mm-hmm.
The next civilization, or let me say, the next turn in history is going to come from Africa. Why am I saying this? Because all other continents have showed us what they can do. They showed us what they're about. Uh, Now it's up to us to do it again. And I say do it again because we started this, and we laid the pathway, because we can show thousands of years of history when it's just Africans in the world. And I'm talking about all over. Africa used to be the world. Let me put it that way. And now Africa has shrunk into this continent we're calling Africa, because we could go to India and find African people there. We could go to
Right.
Australia and find African people there, and so on. So tonight, we're going to look at the things that we need in order to lay a solid foundation for Africa to stand on
Mm-hmm.
for ages to come. And a building block for that foundation is the literature and the writing, and of course, the style of education or the philosophy. But tonight, we're more concerned about the literature. Uh, it's a tragedy that Africa has produced more writing systems
Mm-hmm.
than any other group in the world, and we're still writing with European scripts. That's something that is quite shameful, actually. That
Let me
we.
ask you this. Let me ask you
Mhm,
this, Winnie. Now, obviously, in Africa, you have a lot of different ethnic groups, meaning different languages. Now,
mhm.
as we move forward on a Pan-African, sorry about that. As we move forward on a Pan-African, I would say initiative. Um,
Hmm.
what language do you recommend that we adopt as a central language for everybody in Africa?
Well, that's a great question, but it's also a subject for discussion. If you were to go by virtue of the language that is most widely spoken, uh, uh, and is indigenous to Africa, then Swahili. because that is the language that is most widely spoken. If you take out Arabic, which is in African, you know, Swahili is the most spoken language in Africa. Uh, that's
Right.
just going. Mhm.
No, go ahead and finish your statement. Then I have a
So that's just one way of looking at it. Then we can look at the sophistry of the language, or the depth of it, as in certain languages are equipped with a writing system already, such as Amharic from
mhm.
Ethiopia, right,
Right.
with you know, and such as Coptic in Egypt, and they write with Medu Nature and all. So again, it depends on what the criteria is. If we're looking for uh, a spread and we're looking for a language that is most widely spoken, then definitely Swahili. But we could adopt a script to write Swahili. We could adopt Medu Nature to write Swahili. We could adopt Amharic Ge'ez script to write Swahili. We could use the Somali script to write Swahili. We have tons and tons of scripts that we could use. So for me, it would have been easier to use the most widely spoken language,
Mhm.
which is Swahili.
Somebody in the chat room saying just make English, French, and Swahili the widely spoken language. What are your thoughts on that?
No, no, Africa shouldn't continue with colonial language.
Okay.
That is not. We're not saying we should kick them out of. I kind of liked what South Africa did with the issue of languages. Actually,
What do they do?
South Af- South Africa has 11 national languages.
Okay.
11.
Hmm.
So basically speaking, they nationalized all the major languages in South Africa, and they are official. Like you can use them, in official transaction and all. And English is in there. Afrikaans is also in there. So nobody is going to take English out. I kind of agree with what what's his name, the former Gambian president Yahya Jammeh
Okay.
set out set out to do. I don't know how far he went, but he did declare that he was going to stop the use of English as an official language in the Gambia,
Uh-huh.
and he was going to use a local language, a Gambian language, as the
Probably Wolof. It had to be Wolof.
no, I don't. I think he was going to use his own language, and he's not Wolof, you
But
know.
they speak Wolof primarily in the Gambia. That's what I'm saying. I would think it would be Wolof. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, because you have the Mandinka there, you know, and Yaya Jama is from a tribe that the name just escapes me at the moment. I think uh, the name just escapes me, or Jula or something like that, Jula. So I think the idea was good. Maybe the approach was different. I have not followed up to see how far he went, uh, with regards to that. But it does make sense to use our own languages and also use English, alongside that. But I don't think English should be the national languages or national language in Africa. That is not our future. English is our past. And if we were strategizing well, we should have been preparing to remove it in terms of official languages and replace English with indigenous languages equipped with the script and everything. And there's something funny about language. Language speaks to the mind. The mind understands its own language. One of the reasons that a lot of Africans are struggling with education is the language barrier. I know a lot of smart people that can't speak English, and some of them when they go to school, they don't do really well because their English is bad and everything is in English. English is the medium of instruction. You know, the same goes with French and so on. And so English should, in the future be limited. I mean, look at the world in terms of language. Look at Europe is just a small continent. You know, like Europe is very small. But look at Europe. Every country has its own language, except for I think Austria, parts of Switzerland, and Luxembourg, and so on. They share German. But every country has their own language. The Italians speak Italian. The Spanish speak Spanish. You know, the Portuguese speak the language. Nobody wants to give away the language for another. And nobody in the world who's in control would want to do that. Why would we want to obliterate our languages, our rich? Hello?
Yeah,
Did
right
I
here.
go in?
You're going in and out a little bit, but you're back. Go ahead.
Okay. So why would we want to obliterate our history by adopting foreign languages? Are our languages not equipped enough to be used in the schools? What was the first language to be used in the schools? Didn't ancient Egyptians, ancient Nubians, and so on write using their own languages and their own script? So it makes sense. The Japanese speak Japanese and use it in their everyday life and in the schools and so on, and that's accepted. You know, China is the same thing. India, however, I think it's a mix of English and Hindi and so on. But even that, I've seen a lot of Indian systems where the languages of India dominate. Uh, so we should be working towards something of that sort. I have friends who live in China, and what the Chinese are doing is they are learning English. That's all they're adding. They learn English, but they don't let go of Chinese. You know,
Right, exactly.
the only parts of the world that adopted other people's languages is to the West, and including Africa. You go west and you go to parts, in the Americas, for instance, they say it's Hispanic, which is just Spanish, right? Because they were colonized. So most of the people you find speaking other people's languages, they were colonized by those people, and they ended up being incorporated into the language of the conqueror. Now, looking forward, we shouldn't continue with that. It's wrong because I have taken the pain to look at the structure of some African languages, and they just convey much more, like they resonate better with me and with a lot of us
Right.
because it comes from our DNA. We created it. So, like, if you create something now from your DNA, which is from your mind, which is made up your own DNA, the way your mind functions, it sits well with your offspring because your offspring also carry your DNA and your mind and the way it functions. Uh, all the people who keep saying we are one and we should stop all this, they are just trying to divert our attention. This has nothing to do with racism or whatever. It has nothing to do with it. The people who raise these questions are the ones who are the racists because they find something wrong with Africa regaining its greatness. And they are the racists because they don't want us in Africa to reach where it's supposed to reach. You see? So we should begin to look at the languages. And most of the languages are still intact, I should say, except for the very old ones that have changed forms a bit. But we could take the oldest writing system in the world, which is Medu Neter, you know, and the oldest, most advanced writing system ever produced in the world was produced by us. And we could take that and we could use aspect because we know that Medu Neter has different types, and there's a simplified Medu Neter for everyday writing, and that is and I bet you it's more equipped to spell a lot of the African words. So you find that a lot of names in Africa were lost when they were translated into other languages. And so today,
even as well.
yeah, so today we lose the essence of the names, and certain names just, they lose the meaning, and it's difficult to trace them back to their origins. So people calling, we call the place Egypt now, but it was called so by the Greeks. Our ancestors never called our Kemet Egypt. It's the Greeks that called it that. You know, our ancestors never called the country Ethiopia either.
Right.
It was the Greeks that gave us that. So we find ourselves in this quagmire, and we are trying to use other people's language as a yardstick and trying to use that as a foundation for development is wrong. Nothing built on that foundation will stand the test of time. It won't. What will stand the test of time is if we go back and take the languages that were used in the sciences, for instance, like Medu Neter, ancient and all, are still there. And if we take that and we build on that, then we can have a foundation. For instance, if you go to Nigeria, you have a group of people called the Calabar.
Right.
The Calabar people have their own writing system called the NCB. See, and we're not making use of that, and that's why we need to get rid of things like tribalism. It's such a pain in Africa's a thorn in Africa's flesh because uh, why would you? Some people say, why should I use another African's language? And I ask, but you're using English and it isn't yours. You don't find a problem with that. You don't find a problem using French that isn't yours either.
Right.
See, so we need to get rid of uh, the vestiges of tribalism because they are just inimical to our development and they won't get us anywhere. As far as the choice of the languages to use.
You there, Awini?
But yeah.
Yeah. Went out for a second. So now this might be a little bit off topic, but so if somebody says, how can Africa be on the rise if China is building everything, if we're dependent on China to build up our infrastructure? If you want to answer that question, you can, or we could just continue. Hello? Awini? Oh, I think we lost a brother. Hopefully he'll come back on pretty soon. But everybody in the chat room, thank you for joining us. Spectre from Salem Town, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate the oh, Winnie, you're back. Oh, Winnie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The link.
Quick question. In fact, go ahead and finish. I don't want to go off topic, so go ahead and finish. Oh, Winnie. All right, hopefully Awini gets back on. Professor Davis, Calogenesis. Nice to see you guys. I'll ask. Okay, go ahead, Awini. You keep going in and out. Hello? Hello? All right, so we'll wait. Sorry for the technical difficulties, family. I apologize for that. Hopefully, Awini will be back on here shortly. But thank you for joining us. In the meantime, make sure you guys go to africapersonified.africa. Africapersonified.africa. When you get a chance. From Grig, I love that documentary, that Tommy Sakar documentary. Land of Upright Men. That's a beautiful documentary. Too bad the colonial forces took him out with the assistance of people who weren't in the best interest of Africa, our own people who sold us out. So yeah. So make sure you go to africapersonified.africa. Also go to dynastymirror.com, search for huru.com. Amazon.com, search your name, Dynasty Mirror. Also go to search for Huru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Like, share, all that good stuff. Let's wait a couple more minutes till Brother Awini gets back on. Hopefully he'll hop back on here shortly. I want to make sure we get this information so we don't so you guys can use it.
All right.
All right, we good? We good?
Yeah, the line got severed, but I'm back.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, go ahead and finish it. Go ahead and finish what you were saying, and I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, see, the issue about China is building everything. What is the development, the infrastructure development happening? Yes, some of it is not being done by Africans, but it doesn't mean that China is the one that is, what you call it, financing this. It's Africa financing it. So I would say that it's an African development. You go to Dubai, and the wonderful beaches of Dubai, the palm, styles built in the direct from the water and so on. They weren't built by Arab people. They were built by world-class architects, and it still means Dubai is developed and making strides. That's what I would think. I mean, if you have a job, ideally, it would make sense that everything that we do, at least most of what we do, we should be able to do by ourselves, right? But in some cases, or in most of the cases, we have paid for the services, but it still doesn't mean that the credit shouldn't go to us. We're the ones making the initiative.
Right.
No Chinese can come into Ghana and or Africa and do what they want. They come at the request of the nations involved, and there is a way forward.
Yeah, true. But a lot of times Chinese are coming into Africa and exploiting, of course, illegally mining. I know Ghana is trying to put an end to that. But at the same time, I was reading I watched a video, a news story on how a lot of these Chinese are coming in illegally mining and are getting these Ghanaian women pregnant and leaving them. So
you see, these are issues that will definitely come up. I don't think that they do that without the assistance of Ghanaians. You see, now this is the problem here. If we have ministers that give these Chinese, look, no Chinese. Let me tell you this fact: every corner of Ghana, every stretch of land in Ghana falls under the jurisdiction of a chief or a family or an individual. There's no land lying anywhere that you can just walk and go and possess. It's not done anywhere. Everybody has their territory. Now, uh, the Chinese or any foreigner for that matter cannot just walk into Ghana and go and start mining. Definitely, they pass through some Ghanaians. You see, it may be illegal, but they definitely get the permission of Ghanaians to do that. Nobody can come into an area and start doing what they want there without permission, at least from the locals. So there's something going on there that needs to be looked at, in terms of who is giving the Chinese illegal miners those that permission, at least at the local level, to do what they're doing. So that blame should go to us because we allow that. There's no Chinaman that can come into Ghana and Ghanaians will say, we don't want you here, and they force their way in. It's never going to happen. Never. So they're doing it, with the permission of Ghanaians. This is the problem. So what we are saying here, essentially what we are saying here, even if you see, for instance, you come to Ghana and you find that I think across the country, at least between the north going south, we have these stadiums that were built by the Chinese, but they weren't built for free. It's Ghanaians that contracted the Chinese to build them. You see, and they did them together. Like we of course, Ghanaian labor was used and all, and some of the things that they did in terms of the building and so on, we played, central roles in that.
mm-hmm.
That credit's not given. The dam, the new hydroelectric dam in the Bron Ahafo, for instance, was also a Chinese contract, but it was a collaboration between the Chinese and Ghanaians as well. So in that sense, I would say, yeah, the technical mind is coming from China in terms of some of the new developments you're seeing, but definitely the initiative is coming from Africa. You see,
Okay.
so this issue of what we use, and you see, this is what we are trying to address. Africa is a place, and we use the title Africa Rising because
Yes.
whether we like it or not, Africa is rising. It's not going down. It's going up. Some of us are anxious and we want the rate at which it's going up to be faster, right? We want a faster rate of development. You see, that some of us are not seeing, and we're not happy about that. But it doesn't mean that things are going south. Things are definitely you know, going up in terms of progress. You see, overall, if you grade it overall, the trajectory is upward, not downward. You see,
Okay.
but some of us are saying that we could see a lot more progress, a lot more than we are seeing now. You see, and how we could do that is to go back and build the foundations for a strong continent. And the way to do that is to go back to our languages and start to deal with them on that level. I've listened to several professors on this. There's a Nigerian professor. Tonight, my name's escaping me, but there's a Ghanaian lady, Nigerian Yoruba, professor who gives a lot of detail on like Yoruba language and the folklore and so on and so on. Like Africa is so rich, literally. It's so rich. Look, with all the one thing that the several tribes or ethnic groups in Africa has given us is rich variety. It's like endless variety. Like almost every group has something to offer. You see, and it just doesn't end. So we could go back to the foundations and look at the things we could use to lay a strong foundation for a continent that is looking forward, not backward, because we cannot fall back on European languages. Uh,
Mhm.
if go and ask the Germans why they are not using English as a national language, you know, or ask the Japanese why they're not using Chinese or Korean or whatnot. You see, because they are proud of who they are and they have a language that they are using. And some people do not understand that Africa has the richest language pool and literature pool than any other continent in the world. This is a fact. We have more writing systems than any other continent in the world. We have produced more writing systems than any other continent in the world. This is also a fact. So we shouldn't be handicapped when it comes to making use of these systems because I have had arguments with people. A lot of the time, their their thinking is that if a language does not have a writing system, then it is useless.
Mhm.
You see, so they use that to downgrade a lot of the African languages. But then what they don't realize is all of Europe, all of Europe has borrowed from the Greeks and the Romans in terms of writing. Without the Greek
Awini,
alphabet,
go
for
ahead.
this,
No, you're good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So without the Greek writing system, which the Greeks got from the Phoenicians, and which the Phoenicians got from the ancient people of Kemet, our ancestors. Without that writing system, Europe would virtually have no writing system except for Greece and Rome. They would have none. You see, why is it Russia is using the Greek alphabet? Why is it that the whole of Europe, virtually all of Europe, is using the ABC? The ABC is not what do you call indigenous to all Europeans. They didn't all learn ABC or
No.
develop ABC independently. They adopted it to use to write their languages. The only difference is you see when you look at Spanish written down and you look at it, the only difference you see is the accents. So you may see an O with two dots on top of it, or an O with an apostrophe or something like that to give the accent. You see, that's the only difference in the alphabets they use. But all of them use the ABC, except for Russia. Russia definitely uses the traces back to Greece, ancient Greek. You see, So without ancient Greek writing, which ultimately borrows from ancient Kemet, there will be no writing in Europe. That's a fact. So people making these arguments need to appreciate that our ancestors led the way in terms of writing. If you go to, there's a bone found deep in the Congo or so called the Ishango bone. This is the oldest relic of a mathematical, system or numbering system. You know, now we have languages that are closely related, and the reason why some of us don't want to get into ethnicity is we can easily bundle a lot of languages or ethnic groups together by virtue of the fact that they speak virtually the same language with different accents, you see. And because of that, they share a lot of things. They're virtually the same people, but they still want to emphasize, their few, differences in order to look different. Now, what Africa needs now is for us to converge rather than disperse. So it becomes when we converge the ethnic groups, we can have large groups that can use their own, they can use a script to write their language. You see? And a lot of groups in Africa also have developed their own. The people of Liberia have developed their own. People of Sierra Leone have developed their own. People of Guinea have developed their own. The people of Cameroon have developed their own writing system. The people of Nigeria have a writing system. The people of Somalia have a writing system. The people of Malawi have a writing system. The people of Ethiopia definitely have a writing system. The people of Sudan have a writing system. So it's just endless. So there's no point in us following or borrowing somebody else's script, which is much younger than what we have. What we have is more equipped to deal with our language, our complex languages. Because English, what do you call it? Alphabets. They can spell certain African, what do you call them? Names or words. So you find that sometimes we have to introduce a strange character, which is not in the ABC, in order to accomplish some sort of, semblance of what it is we want to spell. So there's just no point. I don't know. That this is why some of us we are really frustrated with our leaders because they are the ones who should have been leading the way in order to bring us back to ourselves. There's no pride in an African uh, uh, using a European writing system as if he doesn't have one. But we started this, and we still have a lot of them intact. Go to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is still using the gay script, which applies the concept of the abugida, you know. And some of these is like just so easy to write with. I've been studying gays, from Ethiopia. It's so easy to write with. Like you can easily like catch on. You can use it to write, your name, as it is right now, and you can apply the scripts to do what you want to do. You see, so why are we not using these scripts and we're still clinging on to Europe?
Right. Hey,
It's
somebody.
not going to get us. Mm-hmm.
So there's a question in the chat room. So language in Europe took 1,500 years of war, conflict, religion, marriage, trade, and socialization to develop. Is Africa ready to go through what Europe went through to get, I guess, to kind of where?
Uniformity?
Yeah.
No, we don't need that. Why Africa right now has no problem using English. Like Ghana has no problem using English. So if we are able to sit down on, you know, the same a round table and have a, a civil discussion about this, we should be able to arrive somewhere. You know, uh, using a language. We speak English here, but it still doesn't stop us from speaking our local languages. Like I speak my local languages here when I use it. You know, I use it very often. When I go out and so on. So using using an African language or using taking one African language as the national language still does not stop Africans from using their own indigenous languages. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we are trying to achieve here is to bring us back to at least a language that comes from our DNA,
Yes.
that we resonate so well with. And you will see the strides that we'll be making. Look, right now, we are asleep in terms of education. Like we should be doing our own research on virtually every topic there is in the world and creating our own knowledge. But because we borrowed foreign educational system, we are just following others. That will not get us ahead. It'll only keep us one step behind all the time in terms of intellectual property or intellectual development, which is a basis for development. You see, but if we have our own independent educational system built on our own language, then it becomes easier for people to understand these concepts. Like you could take a concept in, for instance, biology or something, and you can use a strange a foreign language to teach a people, but try using their own language to teach them. They get it immediately. They
Mhm.
get it, and they understand. That is the problem here. The understanding of what it is we're learning is what I think is missing in a lot of cases. Because you find a lot of professors all over the African community, but they can't produce anything. Even the production of knowledge, which is what they're supposed to do, they can't. All they do is they go and take what some European or somebody else has done, they polish it around a little bit and present it as something new. Why? Because the foundations have not been given to us. We need that. It gives us the understanding. And once we have the understanding, we can begin to question. We can question everything, and this gives us mastery over the subjects we are learning. You see? And this allows us to explore beyond the boundaries that pre existed. And this opens up the mind. It really does. It opens up the mind so deeply that things begin to materialize in terms of what we can do with our knowledge. But now we're just following, and following is not going to get us anywhere good. I mean, it'll get us somewhere. I'm not saying it's bad per se, but it's not going to propel us to become masters of our own destiny. It's not going to do it, because you go and you meet the Englishman from England, and English is his native language, you know, and he will be able to understand things in his language better than Some of us, English is not our mother tongue. That's a fact. You see, even the way the words are constructed, the grammar in the sentence is based on the thinking of the people who created the language. So we need our language back, at least an African language, and we can make that an official, language. Also, doing this while adopting scripts will give people the ability to write in their own languages as well, because you find that a lot of the scripts that we have in Africa, our ancestors have developed, and people are still developing. They take into consideration the tonation of the African languages. So virtually every single language in Africa can find a suitable African alphabet to write their own language. And this is very good for recording knowledge, because as the saying goes, when an old man dies, then a library is destroyed. But this shouldn't happen, because the old man can simply take an alphabet and apply it to his own language, and he can write stuff down. So
Right.
uh,
Hey,
obviously,
no, go ahead. Finish your statement. Finish your statement. I got a couple more questions for you.
yeah. So obviously, if we want to build for the future, we should go back to our own foundations, not the foundations of people who just recently came here and imposed their languages on us. And they say that without the languages we would have been illiterate. That's totally false. They only say that to people, some of them saying that are ignorant, others are just also saying that to people who they know are ignorant and cannot challenge them. But anybody who knows true history knows that we started the writing system, we started education, we invented our own paper from papyrus, and we did write books, not only in Timbuktu or University of Sankore. No, we wrote books long before Sankore in the Nile Valley.
Okay. So a couple questions in the chat room. Professor Davis says, regional integration is the best approach moving forward for Africans. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know what you mean by regional integration, because
I think because Africa's so big, so large,
yeah.
Well, go ahead.
So I'm guessing you're talking about East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa, Central, and so on. Right. Right. So that divides Africa into more sizable chunks, right? That it's easier, and I agree with that assertion. It's easier to merge, for instance, West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, than it is to merge Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Namibia, Botswana, and so on, because you're dealing with more. Uh, it's easier that way, definitely. But what we need to realize is that even if we're going to integrate regionally, we need a solid foundation based on which we're going to integrate. And we need to know why we're integrating. Because we have the AU, which is supposed to be a continental body, but it's basically not pulling its weight. We also have tried the regional blocks, like we have the ECOWAS for West Africa. Uh, that also has met some sort of stumbling blocks, because ECOWAS was working on the ECHO, as a common currency
Right.
for the ECOWAS region. That hasn't materialized. We were working on opening up borders. That somehow is functional because we use a common ECOWAS passport. So we're trying to like allow integration, move free movement of people. But even in trade, there are still barriers because you have Dangote Aliko from Nigeria, right? He sells cement in West Africa and other parts of Africa, I guess. But because I know he's selling in Ghana, right? But from what some of us gather, there are still lots of obstacles with him bringing cement just from next door Nigeria to Ghana and other parts. But we're supposed to be an economic community. Another problem with some of these regional blocks is the language issue because you find English speaking, French speaking, you see, then it makes it difficult for harmonious integration of people. And also you have the levels of development which are different. Like if you come to Ghana, the level of development in Ghana is definitely different from Togo or Ivory Coast. So it becomes a problem, for integration. But at least we can figure out the foundations upon which we start, which is going back to our languages and using our own scripts and teaching in our own languages and scripts. It's much better.
Okay. And then are you familiar with the let me get back to the question. Are you familiar with Dr. James Agri of Ghana?
Yeah, Agri. I've heard of James, Dr. Agri. I think there's a school to his name, Agri Memorial or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the Achimota School in Ghana?
Yeah. I have heard of
Awini, you there?
yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Chimota is it's an old school. It's an old school, and
Okay.
it's one of the schools that like really shaped Ghana in its early days. I want to believe uh, President Mugabe taught. I'm not sure if he taught in Achimota, but I know he definitely taught in one of these schools in Ghana in his early days, because a lot of African leaders back in the day, they used to come to Ghana to study because the educational system was so good. You see, but now the system is much different.
Okay. Well, sure, brother. What we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out. Anything else you want to share, or any closing comments? Go ahead. And brother Winnie, like always, man, thank you for
Yeah,
for
no
joining us.
problem.
Yeah, but go
All
ahead and
right,
close out
all
and
right.
make sure everybody gets your contact information and how
Yeah,
to going on.
yeah. So let's see the way forward with this, and this is why diners, you know, some of us keep going back to financing our own stuff, you know, because every day there are new ideas. There's always the push, let's do this, let's do that, and then we hit a snag when it comes to finance. So the $1 program is on. Myself and Dines did the last show we did was on it. I remember the consensus was to pick a project and deal with it, like in order to kind of demonstrate, what it is it can do or we can do. But still, I would like to flag the program and say the $1 program is on. and we are advocating for, and Dynas, you could what you call it, champion this
Okay.
in America, and just go ahead and create a PayPal platform under the $1 program, and we're accepting $1 donations every month, and we want to spread the word
Okay.
all over. And so we should, like, people who are on here should tell everybody this is what we need to do. We need to make financial commitments toward financing, in order to finance our own projects. So we
Let me
need,
ask you. I know the school. Your father had a school, correct?
yeah. Well, my father didn't have. My father was teaching in a school.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, but like, as far as education, I have a deep interest. Um, I developed a project which I have not been able to finance. That's why, I keep coming back to this $1 program, because I have several projects that I have envisioned and developed in terms of, business plans, and I've not been able to finance them, because what is needed now in the African community is literature. For instance, we need a library
Okay.
where children can go and have access to Pan African literature.
Okay, Paul. Let's stop right there. So we will the first project for the $1 program will be constructing some type of library.
Yeah, and the construction has to be done in a way that harnesses local material, because the idea is self-help, right? So we make as much use of local material as possible.
That's fine. That's fine. So what we'll do, $1 project. We'll put the me and you offline. We'll put the plans together as far as costs, present it, and we'll build a library in Ghana.
Yeah.
There.
So, and yeah, but what I was even thinking is not only one library, because where is it gonna, like, where I come from, my people up north, uh, you know, we definitely need that facility, not a huge library, but at least just one room, an average size room, where we can house books, maybe have a computer there for research.
Okay.
Community, the community can have meetings there, so we can, definitely discuss the details
Yeah.
of, or how it should be, because we can have several small libraries at the community level, and people can have access to literature. They can have access to lectures. That's one thing I want people to have, because we can have a projector there, and we could give air a lecture on, for instance, all of the master teachers that we have. We have lots and lots of videos that are just sitting there, and our children are not learning anything. So definitely, we'll discuss the details.
Absolutely.
Uh, so
Let- Let's discuss that
so
very soon.
yeah. So let me just close by saying, uh, we really need to start making commitments, real commitments to our development, and it's our responsibility to do so. And we can do so by just making contributions. I think that would lay some foundation for some reasonable projects that will also lay foundations for our ultimate development. And we need to do this independent of the government.
Hmm.
We also need to do this independent of so-called donations from unknown persons. The reason I'm saying this is certain organizations and certain individuals, they will come among us and claim to be for our cause, and they will donate money, and they will want to control the movement because of their donation. Their aim is not to help us. Their aim is to divert the, the attention, or change the direction we are headed. And they will use all manner of covert, and overt means to achieve this. So it is essentially important that we should be the financiers of our development. We
Absolutely.
should be the financiers. And
I agree.
our interest is clear. Our interest is we want to see ourselves develop. Some of us are grown ups now, but what about our children? What about our grandchildren? Like, how is the world going to be for them? Like, look at how things are now. How do we envision the world to be? We need to be looking forward.
Cool.
See, so I want to thank everybody, uh, for this. And if anybody has knowledge on Medu Nature, uh, you know, teaching Medu Nature and whatnot, and the person happens to have a link to Ghana, uh, you feel free to link up with me. I'd like to see how we could get some students to take Medu Nature classes, and take it from there, you know. And so I want to thank everybody for being on. We'll talk next time about uh, a different aspect of Africa rising, in the next series.
All right, brother Awini, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, please go to africapersonified.africa, search for huru.com, dynasamir.com, amazon.com, search your name, Dynasamir. Also go to search for Huru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, everybody, thank you so much. I'll be back on tomorrow. Till next time, peace.